Do you? Hello?
It's working?
It's working? It's working, yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, good, not evening yet, but nearly everybody. You can have a seat. You have some place to do.
Well.
Okay, I think we can start. So we decided just to sit just in front of you to have not something very in terms of courses and so not very didactic. We want just to have a conversation about this something which is very now very famous, which is called ICP2. You know that perfectly. Even me, 2 years ago, I didn't absolutely know that was an ICP. But now I know. I will just, from the beginning, present us. Yeah. I can do. So you have Constance Berger and Andrei. Sorry for your last name, but
Arbachevsky.
Very well. So from the NRO NC, we will say so today. Elected from the community, and I am Hervé Clément from Orange, and so appointed by the executive board of the RIPE NCC about that. We will just present you, just to give the context, a few slides. We will present very quickly, just to have for you the opportunity to have discussion, to ask questions. We will gather your feedbacks about the document. We will represent there. I don't know if we will have the possibility to answer all the questions you have. I don't know, because, or it could be tricky question, and we will need to gather all within the council to answer the question. Or there are very qualified people in the room also who can answer a question. One more time, it will be a discussion. Our wish is to discuss about the content of the document, not specifically the frame of the document, knowing that it's not the final document, it's a draft. You have the opportunity to consult him and to provide your feedback on it. So it's absolutely not finished. And what is very important for us, one more time, is to have your support and your different comment on that. It's a BoF during RIPE 90. It's about ICP2. We will present what is the background. There was another consultation that was about the principle of the document. We will introduce what is the current document you can provide feedback on, which is called, so this time, the Regional Internet Registry Governance Document. And of course, there will be the open discussion I was talking about. An ICP is an Internet Coordination Policy. There are 3 currently, Internet Coordination Policy, and this one is a 2. And this document provides criteria for recognizing new regional Internet registry. Example of criteria, a regional Internet registry has to be sufficiently large for the Savage region. It has to have the support of local number community, it's another criteria, and it has to be technical capable. And if you want to read something about this document, you have the link here. It was adopted, this document, in 2001. So after the establishment of the ICANN, of the ARIN, of the APNIC, and the RIPE NCC, and via this document, the LACNIC was established in 2002, and the AFRINIC was established in 2005. It was adopted, this document, it was 2001. We are in 2025, if I am okay with that. So this document is nearly 25 years old. The internet has changed since then, and the relationship between Regional Internet Registry and the ICANN has changed as well. So it is necessary now to update this document. And it needs to be more explicit also, because one more time I say that this document explicit the criteria for the recognition of new regional internet registry, but is not used yet for the ongoing life of the regional internet registry, and it has to be, in extreme case, useful for derecognition if it's very, very necessary too. It's a slide that Hans Peter presented during the plenary this afternoon. There was, at the beginning of 2024, the review of ICP2. We draft a first document who presented the principle of what could be the document. The communities, you had the possibility to comment of the first document during Q4 2024. We met in Kuala Lumpur to review and to analyze the document. We provide the analysis of that, and we provided a new draft, and you have now the possibility to comment of the new draft in parallel of the ICANN also. And I think it's you, Constance?
Yes.
No?
So I try to explain some more. What did we do? Okay. Thank you. Okay. What did we do? Based on the ICP2, the old one from 2001, we took this document and we drafted principles. We thought about the principles really engaged, and these principles were shared with the RARs in the last year, and we got feedback on the 6th of December. ICANN public comments, we received 14 responses, and from the RAR communities, we got around about 300 responses. The responses were analyzed, and a summary report of the RAR questionnaire was published. You will see this on the next slide. We have done a lot of work, and you can see a lot of our inputs and our analysis team in this website. What did we do? We took every principle and we took every comment. We took every line, every column, and we read it, and a team of us took this and clustered this, and then we summarized that. So, for instance, there had been some issues. There's a need for a balance of authority between the NOEC and ICANN. For instance, a very important point. Giving ICANN the final authority could contradict the independency of the RARs. ICANN might gain a lot of power. That's important issues that we figured out, we bundled that and clustered that, and we decided to took over these points in the drafting document, what you know, the RAR governance document. You can see all principles in the report. Incorporating community feedback. All these comments received were reviewed and categorized. Did the pertain of the principle itself, the phrasing of the principle for the future implementation of the principle. So this we figured out. The comments were clustered, this I mentioned. And these concerns we saw in the comments, we summarized and added to worksheet. The NONC discussed these concerns really heavy. We are 12 people from 12 other cultures with 12 other backgrounds, and the discussions had been hot. Depending on this feedback, we decided whether it was within scope and if we wanted to address it in the new draft of our new document. So what have we done so far? We clarified the role of the community, and RAR decision implies a corresponding process that's necessary according to the RAR governance model. We addressed procedural concerns. We aligned the requirements with common privacy and corporate governance, or elaborated where necessary to address questions about the principles. So, and now, Andre can introduce the next.
Thank you, yeah. I'm taking the last and interesting part. That's presenting the area governance document. And the title itself, it's a working title. It's not the final. It's not ICP something, because ICP series was sort of created back in 2001 and then was not really maintained. There is no underlying process. So I think with this document, we'd like to establish a new series of documents. But the title is for the grabs. I mean, that you can comment on the title as well. What Constance said, we also analyzed all the input, also taking some of the constraints into account. One of the constraints was the ICP2 is a high-level document, and there were a lot of comments regarding implementation. People start thinking how those principles can be implemented in reality. This is very useful feedback, but you will not see this in this document because it will still maintain this very high level. We sort of looked at the feasibility of the principle, but the language, how it could be implemented, is outside. Now, all this feedback is collected and saved, and hopefully will be used by developing procedures, how those principles of this document can be implemented. Another thing was that there were some radical suggestions, I have to say, right? And the scope was, we are not going to redesign the area system. I think the area system proved to be good and well functioning. So this is really an update, not sort of a reset of the system. So with those sort of constraints, here's the document. All right, that's another QR code. You can scan, download the document. Hopefully, many of you read the document and made your mind, have your thoughts about this. But basically, it has a slightly different structure from the ICP2. So making a div would be a difficult thing and not very useful, perhaps, in this context. But I would like to introduce what was really changed compared to the ICP document. The first and probably the most visible part is that right now we are looking at the whole life cycle management of an RIR, right? ICP2 really looked at the creation and on conditions and what are requirements an organization need to meet in order to be recognized as an area. And it was very silent or vague about what happens next, right? So first thing, of course, is how this area, it was implied that it should sort of adhere to the same principles as it was presenting at the time of recognition, but was not explicit in the document. And of course, if you look at organization life cycle, yes, unfortunately, shutdown and winding down of an organization is in part. You can't just drop this at that point and not consider the last point. So that's why all three phases are included in this document, and requirements are clearly stated for all three phases. So it formalizes, it's more clear about the governance structure and requirements for the governance structure. Again, ICP2 is less formal in this respect, but important things that also you can see in the ICP2 is that it's a member controlled governance, right? Well, you may say it's bottom up. Some people said this language is absent in the document, but I think the spirit, we didn't use this word of art, but it is in the spirit of this document. The corporate governance, right, it should adhere to best practices. That sort of sounds normal, but again, we thought that's important to explicitly state it here. And also very important that it has the governance some safeguards, right, from capture. So not one individual or group of individuals or affiliates, organizations can take undue control and influence in the area governance. Well, as far as operations or regular operations are concerned, the requirements again are more explicit. They are extended, including, for instance, audit obligations, transparency of all the documents that should be published, and continuity planning. Continuity planning, for instance, Constance mentioned privacy concerns. So, for instance, we phrase the continuity planning that it doesn't impede on the privacy. So, for instance, there are no requirements that areas share the data necessarily, but there are some procedures that improve. There might be a third-party escrow or something like this. We don't go into implementation, but we address this, that continuity measures should be in place. And finally, well, regarding to the comments, who makes decision, has authority, and how decisions are made, if you look at the ICP2, there is only ICANN that has authority, has final decision. The rest is outside, sort of not very much spelled out. In this version of the document, you can see that RIRs play a much more important role. When we say RIRs, we're not meaning Hans Petter or John Curran, but we mean the area governance process, which might include board decisions, might include voting. We don't know. This document is not to define governance structures or policy matters in individual areas. This document is about high-level principles. ICANN ensures final authority to approve or reject proposals. There are also procedures for appeal, approval, recourse. They are defined in this document as well. So, yeah, I think we're now in this sort of discussion feedback mode. That's the guidance we sort of asked for your comments submitting to the mailing list. It partly applies to this discussion. I think we can be more informal. We have peer pressure here as well, so that will be part of the guidance. And yes, well, the public consultation still exists. Hopefully this session will stimulate the discussion on the mailing lists. Of course, we'll take what we hear here on board. We are not here to sort of argue with you, right? We are here, as I said, we're a sponge, right? We're here to accept your feedback, your concerns. So don't get mad at us if we are not answering your concerns. If we're just saying yes and nodding, it doesn't mean that we necessarily agree with you or that will necessarily document, but we're taking this on board, of course. We will report to the community back, I think, on Thursday at the community plenary, what happened here. And yeah, I think, yeah, we're at the stage to open discussion.
Exactly. So thank you, Constance and André, for that. And it was very important. So you said about this discussion we will have today. We are from the community as well, like you. We are friends. I don't know. So the idea is really discuss and what you will say and provide will be just very interesting for us. Not only more, only less. It will be just interesting. And Ulka, you will have the opportunity to have online questions also.
I saw Randy in the queue who raised his hand in Meet Echo before people got up to the mics. Please log into Meet Echo if you like.
Randy Bush, IIJ Research and Arcus. First, thank you. This probably was not very much fun, and it was certainly hard work. And as they say, thank you for your service. I think you a great start. But it's a start, and I'm not in that much of a rush. So thank you for listening to us, etc. I did cheat and take some notes. I noticed there was first the principles document, but that's not referred to in this document. And in fact, this document doesn't have goals up front. And I suggest goals like the comments I will make are just ideas, not I want X. I don't have the right to want X, and I don't mean things that way. But stability, stewardship, fairness, inclusiveness, representative, are all resource holders of an RIR represented. Okay. Then I notice there's this ambiguous role of the NRO. Sometimes the RIRs go to the NRO, go to ICANN. Sometimes the RIRs go direct. Is the NRO a first-class organization or isn't it? And I don't have an opinion, right? But clarify that, please. There's loose language. For instance, it says RIRs are exclusive, have exclusive areas. Is there an RIR for IPv6 area and IPv4 area? You left out the word geographic, right? So just loose language like that, which for lawyers, come on. It's a mechanics document, right, as opposed to the principles document, but it leaves out some of the mechanics. Some is intentional, I'm sure, as Andre mentioned, the escrow problem. And, if RIPE fails, where are its data? How's that restored? Is it restored in another RIR? And I'm sure RIPE doesn't want its data in the Amazon cloud. Thank you very much. And I don't blame the NCC. So, and then whose policies are followed, right? If we take the Afrinic data, we try to run Afrinic from RIPE until Afrinic comes alive again. Are the Afrinic policies followed or the RIPE policies followed for those? Okay, and by the way, that's not my idea. A frenemy of mine brought that to my attention, and he's here, and I'm sure he speaks for himself. And lastly, it says phrases like recognizing the candidate RIR would not negatively impact the intranet numbers registry system. Not impact measured how? I'm an internet measurement guy. Without the goals up front, how can I judge what's negative impact, what's positive impact? Right? So I've rambled on for too long. My apologies. Again, thank you very much.
Yeah. Very quickly, so you have not to apologize, because one more time it's more than interesting that you say, and so we will have a lot of time to analyze the comments you say. Thank you for your support. So you requested everybody to do their homework to read the document. So you did, and thank you. It's very difficult to balance between the details and the principle, as you say. So that's a thing, and it's a ongoing discussion about that. There are too many things finally in your comments, but we will go back on that and be sure that we will study that. But one more time, we will try not to go into more details about that, but we will do, definitely. I don't know if you want to add something.
Yes, I wanted to thank you, Randy, as well. You are highly experienced, and so we can learn a lot of stuff from you. I did, and so we take your comments very seriously, and so thank you for this.
And thank you for, by the way, keeping the presentation short so we can actually, as a community, discuss. This is the only operations community I go to anymore. Nanog is dead. Aaron is dead. APNIC is dead. This is the only cooperative. I hope you all went to the first presentation of the plenary. This is the last standing forest.
I see lots of people in the queue who are at the mic. So the order of the queue is Andrew, David, Jordi, Warren, and I see you standing in perfect order. Great.
Well, building on those really thoughtful comments from Randy, but in a very small way, Andrew Campling, 419 Consulting. I read the document, and in my head, it seemed to have the underlying assumption that all of the RIRs were acting in good faith. And there were some comments on the mailing list about the voting model in particular, and the unanimity. I know that's sort of partially addressed in the draft text, but it does seem like the model is vulnerable to attack from external parties that aren't frankly acting in good faith. And I do wonder whether, rather than just relying on unanimity or the unanimity of everyone bar one RIR, which still feels pretty vulnerable, that it should allow for a majority in certain specific circumstances, rather than a unanimity of even all bar one, if that makes sense. So I think it doesn't recognize the world that we're in, the forest I think we're well past the deforestation stage. And if there is an attack by an actor with bad intentions, it's not that hard to undermine the model with the draft as it currently is. So I suggest think about majority voting in very limited, contained circumstances.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting. So as you can imagine, there has been a lot of discussion about that. There was a suggestion. It was by the ISPCP, the constituency for ISP and interconnection. So within the ICANN, to test this document with a specific use case. So to see how this document and this principle could react so to specific cases, and perhaps it's something so we could think about.
Yeah, no, I think that's something to think about. The reason the so strong requirements were introduced because we valued the need for cooperation and buy-in from the RIRs, and that was the main reason. Now I see your point about vulnerability and blocking and vetoing stuff. So yes, something to consider. Certainly. Thank you.
David Lamparter. Very basic question, but really related. I was looking at the report of the comments on ICP2, and it says in multiple places, comment received multiple times. Do you mean literally? Are we already looking at people repeatedly submitting the same thing? Are we already concerned about things going in a weird way? Or does it just mean roughly the same content? Or can you clarify a little bit?
I will start. So if you want to add something, so we try to be very careful about that. It was multiple comments. Perhaps I don't remember exactly, received in a week, within a week or something, perhaps, and with I would say similar way to say the same idea. So after, so our principle, because we have principle also, is really to consider and to analyze any inputs we have. It's like in policy discussion when you want to agree on something, it's not a vote. It's an agreement. It's a consensus. So if you have 50 answers with the same ideas, it's an idea. Okay. Finally. So we try to do the best as we can with that.
Jordi Palet. I have basically two points that I think we need to consider, especially with the actual status of the document. One of them is regarding the unanimity. It has been discussed already in the mailing list, here, etc. I think I understand from where it comes, probably. I guess it comes basically because you may have weaker regions somehow, and maybe the stronger regions can confabulate somehow, or there may be the feeling that they can confabulate against the weaker regions, okay? I understand that, but if we have a clear derecognition rationale, if the derecognition only happens if you are not complying, that cannot happen. So I think we should not stick to the unanimity. I think it should be, let's say, at least 3 registries instead of 4, okay? That's one point. The second point is, I am really worried about if we derecognize a registry, how we really do the handover. I understand that's probably not part of this document and there is operational implications afterwards, but I really think we need to have something about that in the document. And my last point, a few weeks ago, I discovered, and I raised this conversation in 2 registries, actually, in AIRIN and LACNIC, that individuals without economical activity cannot get resources, while in the other 3, AFRINIC, APNIC, and ripe NCC, they can get resources. I don't think this is a policy discussion, even if there are right now policy proposals in those two registries, but I think this is part of the basis of the recognition of a registry. And in fact, there is some text in the actual draft that talks about membership in the registries, and it's weak. I think it must explicitly say that any human in the world must be able, never mind it's an organization, a physical person or natural person with economical activity or without economical activity, must be able to get resources. I think it's almost a human right, almost. For example, if we consider what happened a few weeks ago in Spain with the lack of power, there was people dying. In the future, we will see situations where people which lost totally connectivity with the hospital may die. And I can see perfectly, not many cases, but there will be cases where individuals may need multi-homing. And we know that today multi-homing with IPv6 is not possible if you don't have your own provider independent, okay? It's an extreme example, I know, but I really think there must be no difference between persons with or without economical activity. So I am starting to think that maybe there are other basic rights to say somehow, like this one, that are not really part of the PDP. It must be part of the fundamentals of being a registry. So may we need to consider a basic set of, let's say, features to become a registry or to remain as a recognized registry. Thank you.
Thank you, Ardi. I would say so. We can spend perhaps 2 hours to comment on that because it's really important and it's really philosophical. And so it will. So one more time, your input will be used. And regarding the 1 or 2 points you raised about the last point, there have been discussion within the ARIN mailing list and so the other regions. So it will feed the discussion as well. A lot to say, so I don't know if you want to provide something else.
Not a direct response to that comment, but just a general spirit of the document that we tried not to impose. I mean, supremacy kept at the regional level, right? So policy, I mean, we can argue whether it's policy or whether it's not a policy, but we didn't think it is appropriate for ICP to impose some of the policies or rules on existing in the region already, where they should be discussed in the region itself by this document. That was, again, not arguing with you necessarily right now, but just saying why it's not there, those kind of things. The same, there were questions on the mailing list about, right to portable IP addresses, for instance. Again, that might conflict with regional policy, address policies, for instance, in this case. And that would be maybe not appropriate for ICP to impose that on the region.
Yeah. Apparently, I keep falling out of the queue. Warren Kamari, Google. So I'm glad Randy's here because I'm going to steal one of his old catchphrases, which is, where's the protein? I found the document a bit tricky to read. Like I started providing comments and then backing them out and providing them again. It feels to me oddly between sort of a high-level principles document and the actual implementation. So there are things like business continuity. That sounds great. In order for that, you probably need some escrow. That's probably reasonable. But as you mentioned, you're not saying how it should be escrowed, where it should be escrowed, that sort of stuff. And so I'm having a hard time figuring out sort of where the actual rubber meets the road here. Like, there's a lot of things which are, we agree that these sort of things should be done, but without the much more detailed, and this is how they're going to happen, it's hard for at least me to be like, yes, this sounds reasonable, that sounds reasonable. It feels like a mixture between the actual mechanics and the high level principle. And so this is not a particularly useful comment, but
Don't think it's not useful because so one more time. So we are as we say in French, on est dans le guidon. So we say that we are cycle and we just see the road, and perhaps we don't see the way people can react and can read the document, and the way you read it, and the question you ask is also useful to see if so will this document will be useful or not.
No, I think, yeah, I know what you mean. And there is the document a little bit eclectic in that sense, that we try to keep this at the level of escrow, as you just described. Not that you cannot submit comments, not for that reason, but it's really sort of, we didn't want to go into implementation. Still, in some places of the document, you see more detailed prescription, such as the process prescriptions. Now, that was done because we couldn't avoid this. There were so many comments and unclarity how decisions in those major sort of phases where you need to derecognize or you need to recognize an area. So we felt that needs to be sort of somehow, you know, like there must be references for that. But we didn't feel that needed in the case of like escrow or audit, specifics how audit and what the frequency, this kind of stuff should be provided. So.
And I forgot to say, Mike, thank you.
So just one more comment. It's necessary to review this from your side, and every input is really important, and also Jordi. So I think we live in a new time, and we have to figure out how we have to save our infrastructure. And this is an important thing, that we are engaged to do this. Now in this phase, we are focusing on ICP2 on this phase, but let's discuss it. How should it go forward in a better way? And we shall take all inputs, how our multi-stakeholder infrastructure we can save. So this is the comment to say thank you for every input. Thanks.
Jeff Houston, I crave your indulgence. I'm a member of the staff of APNIC, but I am speaking here as a long-standing member of the community, and nothing I say is represented or held necessarily as a view by APNIC. They can figure it out for themselves. Having been involved at the start of this many moons ago, and looking at what you're doing now, what I observe is the translation from the principles document into the draft becomes extremely prescriptive in both operations and derecognition. The operations section kind of intrigues me a lot. It borrows a lot from the highly prescriptive language used in the IETF, the musts, the shoulds, the imperative language, which one assumes as a casual reader applies to the existing RIRs as a new obligation that somehow comes from something other than the membership and community that they are based in. Oh, sorry. That was a here from on my left. The issue was, though, in the original ICP, and the underlying thinking was that the community, the regional community that effectively built this RIR to serve that community had some degree of primacy of view rather than obeying some external condition. The whole relationship with ICANN over global policies was not that we were seeking approval from ICANN. It was we were informing ICANN that we had gone through an agreed procedure of consultation with communities and had ticked those procedural boxes. The content was never a point of negotiation. And thank you. And I sort of read that highly prescriptive language around the operations of RIRs, and I find that challenging to reconcile with that historic view of the community grounding of the operation of RIRs. And maybe it's just softening of the musts and the shoulds that are inside your draft document might address that issue. But I think if we don't maintain a strong principle that we are the organization which is the expression of that community as its prime raison d'etre, we lose something that I don't think is worth losing. We lose the critical nature of what these RIRs do. Great work. Love your work. Love you're not doing it and not me, because I'd never put my hand up for this these days. But nevertheless, you know, you're asking for feedback. That's the bit that I would shape into being gentler with what you describe as operational considerations and possibly even derecognition as well. It's a tough line to balance, but thank you.
Just to say thank you, I suspected your remarks were useful, and it is useful, useful one more time. And I think one work we can do is to reread the document, having in mind the principle you just mentioned.
Yep. Just to reiterate the order of the queue, John Curran has been waiting for a very long time. So the order is John, Salam, and I'm sorry, Clara. And then Daniel after that. We also have about 15 minutes left. So if you're not in the queue now, you just have to keep your remarks short and towards the end. Thank you.
John Curran, President and CEO of Aaron. I don't have input to this process intentionally. This is community and it's your input that we're here for. I have feedback for the community in terms of as it's putting its input in, I would ask to help the ASOAC, which has a challenging job. Some degree of clarity would be helpful in the input that they're receiving. Specifically, we talk about unanimity, I have a problem with that word, and decision points. And it's not necessarily the case that all of the decision points should have the same criteria. So when you get up and speak to the need for unanimous or the need for not unanimous or majority, it might be helpful to be very clear about what decision point you're talking about. There is recognition of an RIR. There's sending an RIR to rehab because it's not doing well. And there's derecognition. We actually have running code for the first in that both LACNIC and AFRINIC were done by unanimous consent of all the RIRs at the time. We haven't done the other two processes, so we have no running code. But in any case, there are three distinct decisions. So when you're providing input to the ASOAC, it would be great to say, when you talk about a decision criteria, what criteria and for what decision? Otherwise, they might have to think you're thinking of all the processes. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Salam Yamud speaking for myself. Practical question is not the principle, but how is the document going to be used in a real-time scenario? I'm thinking of AFRINIC specifically, God forbid it's going to go belly up or something happens. How is this? Did you think about how this is going to help all the RRs community to just solve the situation?
Thank you, Salam. Merci beaucoup. The initial request we had from the NROEC said that if we proceed to that job, it is to strengthen the governance system in something like that. The idea is not to. Okay. Is not to have the AFRINIC as the focus of that, of course. And for AFRINIC, there will be election, so pretty soon as well. So we will see the result of that. That's the way to strengthen it as well. We will try to make a document that will be useful to strengthen the system globally. And we'll see, I would say.
Yeah, I would say, of course, AFRINIC comes to mind, but I think the strengthening part is not in derecognition, but in operational requirements when you look at the audit, so we can capture some of the non-performance quite early and have a possibility to recover And I think that exactly strengthens the whole system. In the overall governance scheme, it's inappropriate, I think, not to talk about derecognition, just in general sense, not about area, about any body. If it comes to existence, there should be a way. It's like today in the presentation, how we get rid of you. You know, this is part of the normal cycle. But I think we should focus on the operation, how we can monitor commitment, ongoing commitment to those principles of existing RIRs.
Just one more thought, and how to improve the situation. So we don't want to de-recognize a RIR. That's not the aim of this document. But we figured out some mechanism how to see what's coming up. That's the reason why.
Clara Wade, AWS, speaking for myself. First of all, thank you very much. You've done an incredible job, and it's a huge undertaking to consider all 5 RIRs here. I just wanted to call out that in the questionnaire feedback report, there was, reference to about 150 comments being nearly identical, and that talks about the qualitative data. But if you look at how those votes look like in the strongly disagrees, in almost all of them, they are around 150 as well. And so I would say take that with a grain of salt, because it feels like in the community, there's generally support for the principles, and we're having more nuanced conversations around them and what the implementation will look like. And that's all.
Yeah, and in fact, there were also cases where people marked this as disagree. But if you look at the actual comment, there was agreement and support for the principle. They disagreed with some little detail maybe in the text, but they marked this as disagree. So we found that disagree, agree, this rank is not very useful. As Hervé said, we're not sort of applying quantitative methods, like, well, if 20 similar comments, it has a lot of weight and others not. We really looked at the quality of the responses. So we treated, and this 150 was just useful for us not to go through every 150, but just to look at one and analyze that response.
Thank you.
One more. We worked so many times with this list, and some comments did not match with the question. So first, and they matched to other questions in the document. So this is not a real disagreement. So other questions had been, in this case, they agreed under conditions, under special requirements. And this we took, and I mentioned we clustered these analyses and phrases and all this, and we clustered it together. And also when a disagreement was to another agreement in the list, so we packed it to this cluster. So we worked really hard on this.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think it's important for everyone in the room to know that. Thank you.
Hi, Daniel Kahrenberg. I'm the first and the current employee of the REP NCC, but as everybody else, I speak as a long-term community member. In fact, I've been involved in the predecessors of ICP1, RFC 1366, 1466, and so on. So I've been around this block a lot. I think, and this is my main feedback, this is not ready. This is not ready by a long shot. Because if you read it and if you think about scenarios that could happen, it's not helpful. It actually is very, very likely to be abused, gamed, and misused the way it is written. I'm sorry I have to say it this way, but this is the way I personally read this. I think, and people have said this before, it is not a good mixture of recalling the principles and then making conclusions from them. It doesn't state goals. It states many, many details, which are, as some people have said, actually Jeff has said, are actually in the regional purview. So I don't know how to get out of this, but I don't think if this was passed right now, it would be bad. Yeah. I can offer maybe one avenue of rethinking it. And that is, what do we want, looking from the principles and from the goals, we want a stable RIR system. And I don't think we're going to get that by regulating escrow, operational details and whatever. I think there's a much better or much more promising way is by looking at how can we safeguard that the regional processes work. And that's a tall order, but I think we can recognize a failed or failing RIR not by the way they operate, but how their community thinks about them. And their community will think about them, not only do they operate right, but do we trust them and all that thing. And the way to get rid of an RIR should be to recognize that they no longer have the support of their community. And I know it's a tall order, and especially in the light of the ethnic experience recently. But I think if you think about that and say, how can we grasp this concept and make it actionable, then you do a much more justice to the nature of the RIR system than by ticking boxes. And I apologize for being as blunt as I am, but this is at the stage where I'm getting really worried. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel, and we are absolutely not desperate about your comments. To have a solid document is necessary to have this discussion. And I talk about crash test we could have with the first document. Apparently, what you read about this document is not the good way to do. Okay, something we listen. I don't know, we will do this work on seeing what could happen if we use it. I cannot say more about that today, but yes, the community answer on the bottom-up process is a thing. So we have it in mind. So we come from the community ourselves. So we absolutely know that. We will not restart discussion, but continue discussion because part of the discussion. So you told it was already said. The result of the first discussion we have is the document you have, but it will evolve.
One more thing. This is not about the people who do the work. You know, I've been victim to this approach before, and I had a guy called Rob Bloxile to tell me in no uncertain terms what was wrong. So, and one last sentence: don't get caught by your schedule. You know, if you have a goal, sort of to publish by this date, it's not God-given. Thank you.
Daniel, when you started, I thought our task is easier because some of the sections should be more detailed and some of the sections less prescriptive. That was my take. Before you started that we need to start with a different approach. But I think we also thought of a non-existing area, a non-existing community that should adopt certain rules and certain requirements that may not exist per se. Another thing that we were thinking that might be applicable maybe in a different format is that it's not we trying to create an ideal area, ideal operation, but operation that is not impacting the global area system as a whole. Escrow, a good example there. You may not have an escrow and you may not care about this, but this creates a risk for the whole system, not just for this RIR.
No, that point I take, but about the new community, we've done this, you know, and if some community somewhere, let's say on Venus, not to say Mars, decides to do things in a way we haven't foreseen, yeah, we shouldn't put them in a straitjacket saying you need to do it this way, yeah. And I think what you said is a good one. very clear where the things that need to be in there to safeguard the whole system. Yeah, and think about whether the things all the things you have written are actually that, and I would think not. But okay, I don't want to hog this mic.
I have 3 minutes left. My name is Osama Dosri. I'm from the Saudi Internet Exchange, representing myself. First of all, I want to thank everyone. I think this is great effort. How do you update a document that's lasted 25 years, policy document? I think it's no easy feat. And I like most of the comments that I've heard, but I'd just like to reiterate the comment on the unanimity for the recognition. I think it's very, you mentioned that the reason it was placed unanimity is because there's an assumption that the RIRs will cooperate. I think that's a very big assumption, and it may not necessarily be a wise assumption. And not to beat a dead horse, I just want to thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes left. How to use it? Thank you for responsibility. So there is a last question. So there is a good way to use the last 2 minutes.
Anna Wilson, HEANet, former ASOAC member. Thank you. A thing I learned from my time on the ASOAC was when we were doing stuff which was lower stakes than this, and we had a level of detail, and we encountered problems with it, and we reacted by adding more detail, it got worse. That's my comment. Thank you.
Yeah, very good approach. And so very good to have so your experience from the former ASOAC member as well. And it's not the end of the discussion. It was the end of the BoF. No, but we will have the opportunity one more time. So we will be available every day from 1:30 to 2, so near the meet and greet place. If you want to continue the discussion with us, we will be available for that. We will retalk about this point during the Addressing Policy Working Group Wednesday morning, and there will be a recap of the discussion on Thursday during the community plenary. And with that, thank you so much. Yeah, okay. But I didn't see him.
No.
Okay.